Hi guys, it's Belle here, and it's time for episode 3 in the Craftly haul journal tutorial that I'm doing. Again, this is using the Craftly Curious Case of the Craftly haul kit from 2024 by the wonderful Tracy Fox. Links to her will be down below and to the kit. And today we are going to work on the cover. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to cut the board. Now I have some book baseboard. Can you see? I'm trying to get that so you can see how thick that is. You don't have to have this. I have used, you know, hard-backed envelopes. They have the card in it. I've used that for my covers. You can use the cardboard from cereal boxes. What I would say is if you're going to do that, I would double or even triple the pieces together. I wouldn't just use one piece of card from a cereal box for a cover. This is like a baseboard. If you're here in the UK, I got mine from Hobbycraft. This is the number, but just go in there and have a look at any that you see. I did choose different ones. The color doesn't matter, it's going to be covered, but you can see just how thick that is. And we are going to cut this. Now I'm going to do the journal. It's going to be 6 inches across by 8.5 up. So let's get started on cutting that. I've got me paper trimmer. You can't even see the bottom of this because of the way it is, but just trust me that it is 6 inches. Sure that's nice and flat. I am so sorry. That was a rather loud noise. And again, do another 6 inches here. Let's get that, make sure it's all nice and straight. Hold it down. I apologize again, but you know. Okay, and then we're going to do, I said 3.5, a 3.5 inch spine. So that is what we're going for. It's quite a chunky spine, but that's okay. And now I need it at 8.5 inches high. Me. Okay. 8.5. I'm gonna have that way because that's nice and flat. I think this is even chunkier than I usually use. I normally buy it in bulk, and I've just used the last of my other one, but I forgot to remember what the code was, but it doesn't matter. Hobbycraft do lots of them, or you can probably find it online and stuff, or use what you have around the home. Okay, so let's just make sure. Yeah, so again we have 6 inches across by 8.5 inches. I am double checking. Yes. And again, and then we have 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and that will be our spine. Okay, so we've got our baseboard. Now, what I have decided to do is I am going to use a fabric and then put a lace over it. So let me show you. It took me ages to decide on the fabric I wanted to use. I didn't have anything that quite fitted the feel that I wanted. So I have had this, I think it's an old curtain, in my stash for ages. I picked it up from a second-hand shop for very, very little money. It's got all this kind of grey and black on here, just everything. But obviously this was too clear and white. So then what I did is I took a piece of it and I tea dyed it. This is what it ended up like. Now this is too orange for me. I guess if you coffee dyed it, you might get a deeper color, but again, I don't coffee dye. So tea dyeing, and I did crumple it so you've got different depths of color on the piece. Still thought not dark enough or grungy enough. So guys, I pulled out the 3 inks that we used through the journal, Black Soot and Vintage Photo Distress Oxide sprays, and Cracks Pistachio Distress Oxide spray. And I just wet the whole thing, sprayed all over, and then to get these kind of weird marks on it, I actually, because I needed to clean my inks, I actually just cleaned them. I just grabbed them and cleaned that and the inside of the lids, although that lid's still got plenty in it, on here. So we get these kind of strange lines and things as well. So 2 purposes. So this is what it did look like. And now we have this. I feel like this is much grungier. Again, look at what you have. Look at how you could dye it, ink it, do all that kind of thing. And then I pulled out some of my favourite lace that I have very little of it of. This is quite thick, this one. And we are going to cover this with the lace. So you are going to see some of the colour through. It actually shows up much better on camera. You're going to see some of the colour through. I went for this lace because I did have this much thinner spiderweb lace. And now I'm looking at it and thinking I quite like that too. I thought there wasn't enough lace on this. It's not covering it enough. That actually would work. I'm trying to see if the kind of colours and textures and things match. Okay, let's have a look. We've got this one. Let's move it over. This is thinner, so it would make it easier to work with. Or we have the thicker one. I'm going to go spiderweb. I wasn't going to. I am now. See? Changed my mind. So, yeah, this is just a little spiderweb lace. You can pick these up really cheaply over here in the UK in like the Range and things like that around Halloween time. They're usually tablecloths, and then I pick them up for my journals. So now what we have to do is we have to try and cut this to size. I have been cutting through this in all sorts of places, so there's no straight lines, which just makes life so wonderful, doesn't it? I mean, come on, Belle. But yeah, we are going to cut enough of this. I'm wondering about, where's my big... I lent my son my really big old green mat for some of his work, and I'm thinking what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out my fabric trimmer. So let's grab that. Obviously you can just use scissors, but I'm wondering if this will work better to try and cut this. I guess be so careful with your fingers if you're going to use one of these. Has that cut through? You're not supposed to do it the way I did it anyway, so do you know what? I think scissors are going to work better. Okay, change my mind. I'm just going to come in and trim. Can you see the scissors are down here? You'll see them as they come up. So I'm just going to trim the lace to roughly the size. Now, I always cut my lace a bit bigger than the piece of fabric, because when you're sewing, sometimes the lace can stretch or it can kind of ruck up, and it just means sometimes it doesn't quite go where you want it to. Well, that's what I find. I'm sure those of you out there who are more proficient with the sewing machine and fabric than I am will be able to do this in an easier way. But, you know, there we go. Okay, wait a minute. I need to do this bit. Okay, so we've got far more than we need there. But you will end up with, what's going on here? Some lace over the top. Now again, use inks, use tea, coffee, whatever dyeing that you think will get you the colour that you want best for your cover. Now, this is bigger than these. Let me show you. So you want to cut your piece of fabric, leaving at least an inch either side. Mine is a bit more than an inch. You can see there it's a bit extra, but it's at least an inch. More like an inch and a half either side. I'm not too specific, but yes, at least an inch either side. And the reason for that is that this will have to wrap around your journal, the card. So you want it big enough to give you that border. And yes, that's what we need to do. But before we do that, what we then have to do is what I do anyway, is I stitch the net, the lace, onto the fabric. And the first thing I will do is I'll go around the edges and stitch that down flat. And then I often stitch through it. It holds the lace it holds the lace still on the piece of fabric. It gives it more interest. But please remember, if you are going to not do a hidden spine, if you're going to stitch your signatures through the fabric, then don't stitch right in the middle here, because it's going to make sewing in your signatures really difficult. So I'm trying to find my pins. Let me grab some pins. So it's good, especially if working with lace, to try it and pin it into place as best as you can, because again, when you're sewing, lace in particular can be a bit tricky to sew with. And again, I like to try and do the corners to hold it in place on the corners and the edges. Also, while you're doing this, think about where you want to start from when you're sewing. I tend to choose to start from the back, what is going to be the back of my journal first. Just because if there is a little issue, at least it's at the back of the journal than at the front. And again, I'm just going to stitch it in the center too, and just kind of do that to keep it in place. Like so. Now, when you're going to do this, by now you should have thought about roughly what the cover of your journal is going to look like. Have I done that? No. But realistically, you should. And the reason for that is that if you feel like whatever you're putting on the cover needs to be sewn through this fabric to give it more stability, then you need to think about doing that before you then glue it to the card, because otherwise you won't be able to go back and redo that step. So yeah, there is that. Have I thought about my cover? I mean, I've roughly thought about my cover. I don't think it's something that I would need to stitch through, but you know. So I think because I really like this kind of green down here, because I really like that, I think I'm going to have this as my front, which means this will be my back. So I will start stitching from this edge down. Like I said, I'll do all around the outside first, the border, a bit like when you're doing a jigsaw, always do the corners and straight edges first. And then I'm going to stitch through the actual fabric. Because it's netting, I am going to use a zigzag stitch because I feel like that holds the lace in place better. Also, that's my favorite kind of stitch to use, so that's what I'm going to use, but use what works for you with your fabric and what you're doing. So I'm going to go and do that now. Okay, so this is now all stitched around. Let me show you. You can see that I've stitched over these two, but I've left what will roughly be the center so that none of the stitching, I mean, you can barely see it from this side, you can just here, but it really just looks like part of the net. And we have all this leftover lace, which I'm just going to trim now. So I did think realistically I should say to you roughly the size of fabric. I know I didn't, I just kind of said make it a bit bigger, but that's not very helpful, is it? So let me actually try and give you a size. I think the thing is, when you've made so many journals, you kind of just learn to go with, you know, it's kind of becomes almost second nature if it's a journal style that you've made regularly. And because of that, it can be hard to remember that there's plenty of people making it for the first time. So let's give people actual numbers. Okay, so if your journal has 6 inches front and back for the main cover, obviously you need a piece of material that's at least 12 inches long. Then you add on the size of the spine. So in this case, a 13.5 inch spine. So we're looking at 15.5 inches. So you then have to add on the 1.5 inches. So if it's 15.5 with the front and back cover and the spine, that then becomes around 18.5 to 19 inches wide. Then obviously, if your journal is 8.5 inches tall, and you're adding on at least 1.5 inches. I mean, mine goes to 11 inches. So yeah, about 18.5. This is 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Mine's actually 19.5 inches this way and 11 inches this way. But you always take the measurements for the front and back cover, add the spine, and then add at least 1.5 inches all the way around. That's how you work out how much fabric roughly you need. So we have this. I need to remember this is the front. So we have this now. Now we get on to the gluing. So to do it like this. So now what you need to do, make sure your fabric is the right way up. So this is the front of mine. Make sure it's the right way up. Then we need to get our cardboard. Now, I use high tack, all-purpose, very sticky glue. I find this works for me. You can use probably Fabri-Tac if you have that. You can use, I have used PVA before and that's been okay. What I would suggest you do before you do anything else is check that the glue won't seep through your fabric, or that if it does, it will be clear. And I actually haven't checked that, so I'm going to check that now. I mean, it's going onto the card, so it shouldn't be a problem. That is too much. Let's put a lot of that on there. Yep, that should be fine. Okay, so I put it directly onto the card and use a paintbrush. You can use a spatula, whatever you've got. And yes, I'm doing it straight onto the fabric there, because if any goes off the edges, the fabric's going to need extra glue anyway. So, but by flattening the glue out, either with a paintbrush, spatula, one of those little plastic cards, whatever, you should get not only a better adhering to the fabric, but you shouldn't get any like lumps, bumps, and if it is gonna show through a little bit and dry, it shouldn't go through the fabric too much, because it's nice and flat. I hope that makes sense. Make sure you're really getting into those corners though. That's what you have to make sure, because the corners need to be glued down. Again, I don't mind that the fabric's on there. I can brush that out because we're going to be gluing it all anyway, so it doesn't matter. And then this is where you start putting your fabric down. You're leaving your border of at least 1.5 inches, like so. Now just let me grab something. Okay, what I will always do, usually it's a book, but I will grab something that's heavy to keep it in place whilst I'm doing the next bit. Now we're going to move on to the spine. And again, just going to glue, make sure those corners are really well glued. You don't want to oversaturate your card with glue. One, because it is more likely to go through the fabric on the other side. And sometimes glue doesn't dry clear, and you don't want that on your journal. And two, you don't want to make the card all distorted, especially if you're using a thinner card. You don't want to have it all distorted and not straight. So now I need to look at where the edge of this is. I'm going to line up the top and bottom, making sure it's straight. And I'm going to leave about, is that about 1/4 inch? Yeah, it's about 1/4 inch. Now, the reason I'm leaving quite so much space, you should always leave some space so that your journal can open and close easily. But the reason I'm leaving about 1/4 inch is because we are also going to do fabric on the inside. So I need more space. Hold on, let me just move this a little bit over because there's some glue there, so I don't want to actually move my fabric onto it. Yeah, I need a little bit more space because we're going to put a thick fabric on the inside. So that's what I like to do. Yeah, I always usually put fabric on the inside around the spine, and then sometimes I'll use either a really decorative scrapbook card, or as we are doing in this one, what I've started to do is use just the fabric all across the inside. I don't know which is better or worse. It really depends on your journal, on your style, and things like that. If I was doing a hidden spine, I wouldn't do it that way. But we're not doing a hidden spine on this, so yeah. I have a journal actually that I'm working on sort of alongside this, that you probably won't see for a while actually, because of other projects as well. But that will have a hidden spine, so if you don't know what one is, I'll be able to show you with that one, although it will be finished. But it basically just means you don't stitch through the whole thing. This is going to be quite a challenge to stitch through because this baseboard is actually quite thick. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to line up top and bottom, and we're going to leave again about 1/2 inch. I am not measuring because I eyeball, just because again I've made a lot of journals, so I tend to be okay with that. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is we're going to cut these edges. So you're going to come in and you're going to cut them at about a triangle. I still leave a little bit of space. I could probably cut it even nearer than that, but I'm not going to for the moment, because I always get worried in case I cut too much. And you can always trim more, but you can't really add more once it's all glued and stitched and all that to your journal. So give yourself a bit of space on them. And then this one. And the reason we're doing that is we're going to come in and we're going to glue the edges down to here. So let's make a start on that as well. When I'm doing this, again, glue, I like to both do it onto the card, put some glue on the card, but I actually also like to glue the fabric as well and get really down. See the edge piece here where the card is, where the edge of the card, really get glue on there too, so that it's all going to stick, hopefully. Thank goodness I have another one of these glues. Yeah, get those edges. You really want to get the edges on this bit, because you want this to stay in place like so. I'm actually going to use a bit of the scrap fabric to just pick up that glue, because I need to move this over. Now there is glue coming through here, but that doesn't matter on this bit because we're not going to see that bit, if that makes sense. That's going to be covered. And now we're going to work on the other. Let me just again, so I don't want it on the outside. We're going to work on this one. And this is another reason I tend to stitch my lace as well, because when I start cutting like this, the edges, you can have a gap where the lace and the fabric are. And if it's stitched down, it just really makes it easier to keep the whole thing flat. So, yeah. Would also probably make it easier if I just decanted this into a bowl, but I don't like doing that, only because I just want to use what I need, not then be left with a whole pot that I can't put back, if you get my meaning. I'm going to do that. Really, really press that down. Press along the edges, making sure that's stuck in place. Do you see the glue coming through? That is not what you want to do on the front, which is why you do it so much lighter than I've done here. Okay, so we have done that. And already we're starting to get our journal cover. It always feels so lovely when it starts coming together like this. I love it so much. Okay, so now we're going to do the bottom. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. go along. But because you've got the spine here, this is where you have to be a bit lighter with the glue, but you do want to get down into that bit with the spine. You do want to get down into there to make sure that it's going to glue, it's going to stick down there. This is when, you know, you start stressing in case you ruin the beautiful cover you've just put together, or anything like that. I'm going to put it on here because I can spread it out. Okay, that'll do. You can spread it out this way, spread it out there, spread it out here. Again, I'm trying to get those edges, trying to get inside here, but without putting any glue on the outside. Really trying to get glue where it needs to go. Here too. And because obviously you've got these edges here, you really want to get some glue on those edges here. To make sure that when they glue down, they stay stuck down. You can always come in and do that afterwards anyway. So let's get this up. And when you do this one, again, press it, really press. Get that pulled up, press it into place. Make sure it's nice and flat, that you've got those edges nice and flat. But then what you also want to do is come in with something like a bone folder and just press down in there, so that as it dries, it should dry with this little indentation, because obviously we're going to put more fabric on top of there and we want it to be able to open and close. I'm just making sure there's no glue there. Okay, I'm going to do the next bit off camera and then show you. Okay, so I am done, guys. We have done. Now, you can see there's some edges. I'm going to deal with that. But what I would suggest is once you've got all this glued down and in place, what I would suggest you do, which is what I'm going to do, is put it somewhere where you can press it down and leave it like that for a couple of hours. Whether you're going to weigh it down with some heavy books, maybe put some baking paper or something over it, because like I've got some glue here, and if you're going to put anything on top of this that could stick to it, you don't want that. So, you know, try and make sure that there's no excess glue. I'm sorry if you can hear noise. It's sunny, it's the weekend, and my neighbours have decided that this is the time to have music blaring and stuff. So, yeah, weigh it down with something. Heavy books, any kind of boxes you've got like that. But again, if you've got any glue, make sure there's something covering it that's not going to stick. Then we're going to come in and deal with these edges. So don't worry about that. But yeah, we have the base of our journal, and look how that looks in it. Doesn't that just look yummy? So I'm going to go get this weighted down. Again, do it for about an hour or so. You really want the card to adhere to the fabric. You want it to dry through. You want it completely flat before we do the inside. Okay, so this is basically dry now, and the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to snip these little extra corner bits off. Just snip them right off, and you can see, even though they're snipped off, trying to get that so that it focuses, it's still covered. And this is where we're going to make another decision. So, as I said, I'm going to put some fabric on the inside. I'm just wondering if I want to ink around the edge of this first. I think I might do. I'm going to come in with black soot. And I think I may just edge all of this in black soot, just to give it even more kind of grunge. So do that. And when you are edging, I'm moving this all over the place, so I'm sorry if that's playing with the camera, don't forget to do the edge of the spine bit, because that's going to open and close. So on a book that's going to open and close, that's the bit of the book that will also get nice and dirty, like so. I think I need to buy a new black soot, or re-ink it rather. So we've got that. I'm going to do the tops. So I'm going to go around this whole thing with black soot, and then we'll come back for the next part. Okay, so that has black soot roughly all around it. Now I'm just going to use some of this really thick black kind of canvas fabric on the inside. So this is where you need to make a decision. Normally what I would do is only cut about this much of the fabric, so you have this, and then I would put that in the middle over the spine and the creases, and then you can put paper either side. But that's not what I want to do. I want to actually have the fabric just coming over the top, a little border everywhere, to just give it that little bit again of some interest. Now obviously this bit is a bit longer and so is this bit, but we can trim that. So we're going to do exactly the same thing as we did. The problem with this is I know this canvas, the glue can really show through. So what I need to do is get the glue on here, and you're going to put it right up until the edge of all of this, and make sure all of this is glued down. It's going to need a lot of glue for this bit. Again, Fabri-Tac, whatever you use that you know works and is going to stick glue down, and that hopefully dries clear. And then get in the middle. Really make sure you get in the middle, that you're not just doing a little bit, because this fabric, the black fabric, is going to be pressed down there as well. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to get my other bottle of glue out for this, because I definitely need more glue, especially on the fabric bits. I want to make sure that fabric's completely covered, because obviously we want the other fabric to adhere to it. So completely covered, and then I try and work on one bit at a time, but I'll do a little bit over here. I don't want to put glue on the whole thing, because by the time you then get to put your fabric down, a lot of the glue may have already dried. You do want it going a little bit tacky, but not completely dry. Okay, let's bring the fabric on. And I'm going to do it this way, because this way I can see the edging where I want it. And this is where you're going to press this fabric down, and again you're going to bring in your bone folder and press that bit In fact, the bone folder's good as is for pressing all the fabric into place anyway. Really want to press it down. And I'm going to continue and do all of that on the other side. Okay, so that is all glued down. I did get a little bit of glue here, but that will go. This opens and closes. I need to make sure that's really pressed. And now what we're going to do is we are going to do exactly as we did before. We are going to put this under something for about an hour. We are going to press it down and make sure everything's in place. It's a good idea at this point to go round and just make sure you've got enough glue in the corners. But we're going to press this down and we're going to come back to it in about an hour. So the cover is now completely dry. I actually left mine overnight to make sure that it's completely dry. There's no dampness whatsoever. The glue's all dried. I made sure to go in and any corners that weren't completely glued down, I went in and fixed that. But you can see, if I hold this up, you can see that this is not right. So we're going to have to fix that. And I also need to trim a little bit this end and a little bit at the bottom. I think I like the top. I might also trim that a little bit. We are going to see. So I was looking for my small metal ruler, which I can't seem to find. I'm wondering about just bringing this in and kind of trimming it. And again, I want my little mat that I can cut on, because I feel like I don't want to cut on the glass, because I have done that and the glass did actually have a cut on it, which, you know, is not good. So let's just trim this a little bit and see if that actually, is that even cutting off? That felt like that cut. I might need to replace my blade on this. Okay, so that's better. What I'm going to have to do, you can't really see because it's, do you know what? Hold on. There we go. Because it's black on black, you can't really see what I'm doing very well. So I'm going to do that. I definitely want some threads. So we're definitely going to do that. Do it like that. They don't all have to be perfect, which is brilliant. Can you see that? Can you see how they're not perfect? Now, if you like them perfect, which I don't, which is why these are bothering me. But if you like them perfect, you can obviously have them more perfect. I like a few sort of sticking out and not looking all wonderful. And now I'm wondering, now I've got to trim this one. Let's get my bigger mat. And let's hope I have enough of my blade still left to trim without having to change at the moment. Oh. You can see I don't use one of these very often, can't you? I'm at the bottom now. Let's have a look. Okay. Kind of see where that is, so I'm just gonna cut. Yeah, I'm going to replace the blade. Admittedly, I've had it on there for a couple of years now, so I don't use it too often though, so I was hoping it would have lasted a bit longer, but there we go. I've got a spare blade, so it's not like it's a problem. I want it slightly shorter at the bottom, because obviously when you then have this sitting on a shelf, it's better to have it a bit shorter. Okay, that cut through much better. I still think we need more, but that's okay. That will do for now. Let's move all this and get all the threads off the table and make sure that we cover that up so that I don't go and stab myself with it. And then, yeah, just start pulling threads. On the fabric. Ooh, I'm really pulling on this one. Perfect. Can actually go a bit more. Yeah, perfect. And then that's going to get trimmed too. I want it trimmed a little bit. There are probably easier ways of doing this. This is just my have a go method and see what happens. Most things can be fixed. At the end of the day, guys, it's a bit of fabric and some card. So worst comes to worst, you know, you can restart if you really had to. Okay, a bit more. And now I'm thinking, do I want that at the top as much, or do I want it smaller at the top too? I feel like I want it smaller at the top. Let's just pull at the threads. Get these ones up. If a thread won't come out, then get a pokey tool or something and just kind of put it in there and pull at the fabric of it. Just want the threads. I saw in one of the comments that someone said that it's like making a journal backwards, because I've already got all the ephemera, and normally you might start with the journal and then move on to ephemera, which I kind of like that kind of idea, that it's making a journal backwards. But actually I know a lot of people can't do that, because a lot of people have a lot of ephemera pre-made. I tend to not have ephemera pre-made. So yeah, for me this is interesting, because I normally make the ephemera once I've got my signatures and my journal cover together. And then I kind of know how much ephemera I need, and this way I've got all the ephemera and I have to make the journal to fit it. So yeah, I liked that. So there we go. Not everything's perfect. Not everything's absolutely straight. I love that. It adds to it. But we've just got that little bit of fringe. And if I put the signatures into it, you can see that fringe is just a little bit of detail on the edge. And obviously when you open it up, you can then see that. So yes. And the next thing, the last thing we're going to do in this video is we're going to make our template for the spine. Now, obviously this is about 8.5. I cut down some paper. Where has my template gone to? So this is 3.5. So you'll need to cut a piece of paper that's about 3.5. You can cut it completely to size. I just used a piece of A4 paper, which is the same size as my actual paper, because this is just A4. And yeah, because that's just how I do it. If you need to put it all the way to the edge, then do that, but I'm all right with it like this. Now this is 3.5 across. The first thing I always do when I'm making a template for the spine, for the holes when you're going to sew your signature in, is I fold my paper in half. That gives me the center. This is also as well where I'm going to put some holes so that it's already folded neatly for me to put into my signatures. And then obviously comes the maths. Now I'm going to be honest, guys, I hate sewing in signatures. There are 2 reasons for this. Firstly, it's just all the threads getting in the way and moving your journal around and trying to make sure the needle's definitely going through the signature. It can all be a bit much. And secondly, there's a lot of numbers involved. And this one in particular was, because it's 3.5 inches divided by 4, doesn't quite work out in measurements. So I actually went for centimeters this time, guys. I will try and tell you the equivalent as inches, but it worked out better as centimeters. Now you don't want to put a signature right to the very, like, you don't want your signature right here on the spine, because you need, as the signature gets chunky, you need space either side for your signature to be able to, 1, be able to open and close really well so that it can be used, and 2, so that like it doesn't distort the cover. So I have gone in, where's my ruler? I think I've gone in 1¼ centimeters. I'm going to try and get that up. I don't know if you can see it. It's 1¼ centimeters. Let's see if you can see an inch, which is let me try and get that up. Can you see that? It's 1 and a bit, half and a bit inches. So 1¼ centimeters each side I've come in at. So these are going to be 2 of our signatures. Then I've measured 2 centimeters from here. So I've gone to the 1¼ mark, and then I've gone in at, I hope that's showing, at 2 centimeters, which is just over 1 1/4. It's almost 3/4 inches, 3/4 of an inch, but it's 2 centimeters there, 2 centimeters there, which leaves us with just under 2 centimeters in the middle. You always want your, well, I find that my second signature always needs to be at a different distance often to my first signature, and here's the reason. You might think it should be equal, but if you're going to have enough room for both of your signatures to open and close, you need the same amount of space on this side and this side for your one signature, and then the same amount of space on this side and that side for another signature. So you're always going to leave a little bit more space. That's how it works in my mind. I really hope that makes sense. I am not the best at this. It may be better for you to go and find another tutorial for sewing in signatures, because this really is not, even after all the journals I've made, I think it's because it's numbers. It just really stresses me out. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. Now, normally with a bigger journal, most people do 5-hole pamphlet stitch. I find that 3-hole is fine. I've occasionally done 5, but a 3-hole pamphlet stitch usually works for me. So that's what I'm going to do. If you'd prefer to do 5-hole pamphlet stitch and you've done that before, then, you know, do what works best for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half, because that is going to be our middle hole. And then I'm going to come in at about, considering I keep using this ruler, I've just put it in the completely wrong place. What am I doing? I'm going to come in at about 1½ inches. The light is awful for me to be able to see this. So yeah, I'm going to come down. Do I want it at an inch? No, I'm going to come in at 1½ inches on either side. From the top, and then I'm going to do exactly the same at the bottom. again, just sew your signatures in as you would normally. I'm just doing a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. It works best for me. It's been fine in my journals. It's more to do with how secure you think your pieces are going to be. Like, I'm looking at this now, I'm wondering if it should be 1 inch from the bottom and top. Do I want it to be 1 inch? I'm looking at my signatures. No, that should be fine. Okay, and that's then when we come in with a pokey tool. And we are going to poke our holes. So signature 1, just poke those in that center crease and where that line crosses over. Signature 2. Oh, and when you're making this template, always put where the top is. Have a little arrow so that you know where the top is. So yeah, I'm sorry if this is all a bit not making a lot of sense, but yeah. And now I'm going to come in that center fold there, because that's going to be the bit that I use for my signatures. So you really want to make sure that those holes are lined up with the other holes. Yeah, so that's going to be the center of my signatures. And now we might as well put the holes in here. So what I like to do is I like to see if there's space top and bottom, because there tends to be in mine. I want the space to be about the same top and bottom. Then I'm going to come on and hold it with my clamp. And I am literally making sure that it's straight. You really do want to make sure it's straight. And I like to do this because then I can see the edges a bit better. Okay, that works out better for me. And then we're going to come on and we are going to stick. I'll use our poker tool or our awl. Let's use my awl. And we're going to go through our cover. For our 4 signatures. Remember, you're just doing it for the signatures. You're not using that middle. You're not doing these holes for the middle. It's just for the signatures. Like so. And now you get to decide on what wax thread you're going to use for stitching in. So we're going to talk about that when we are going to stitch in. Now the thing with using laces, sometimes like you can see some of those holes, but the thicker the lace, the harder it is to see the holes. But that's okay, because you can just come in with your awl again and really make sure that those holes have enough space and that you can see them on the other side. Where did that one go to? Okay, right, well I'm going to have to look at that. Did I not do that one? See here, that's it. Obviously be careful when you're poking holes through things that you don't get your fingers. So that's it, guys. We have made a start on our cover. We have got our template ready for when we want to stitch in our signatures. But before we stitch those in, I always like to do one last look through, see if I want to add anything. And we are going to do that in the next video. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Please do like, subscribe, comment and share if you haven't already. I deeply appreciate it. I'm back soon with another video, and until then, wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having lots and lots of creepy, crafty fun. Bye for now.